Hello and welcome to the See For Yourself podcast, the podcast of wild speculation and movie dissection. I am your host, Roozle Doozle, and I am joined today by...
Brian Fletcher. That's how you do an intro right there.
Oh yeah, that nice thick, what is it, a baritone? I don't know, I have no ear for this stuff.
Yeah, I think we're both kind of baritone.
Yeah, we can we'll bar bros, you know?
Yeah.
Today we are going to be discussing the film, I believe it's called The Black Phone.
Yeah, The Black Phone.
The Black Phone. And I'll just go ahead and read off the blurb for it so we have an idea of what we're going into here. A 13-year-old boy who's being held in a soundproof basement by a masked killer. When a disconnected phone on the wall starts to ring, he soon discovers that he can hear the voices of the murderer's previous victims. And that's about all we get out of the blurb. So just before we get into that, I do want to say that here at See For Yourself, we do try to typically limit ourselves to movies that are easily accessible for people, things that you can get a hold of pretty easily, either through streaming services. Typically the free ones we try to aim towards. And this movie will be in theaters as we're watching it specifically.
This is the opening night.
Yeah.
In theaters.
Yeah, we will be seeing this tonight on opening night. This is a golden episode. Both of us are completely ignorant. We have not seen it. I specifically, the blurb is all the information I have going into this.
I watched the trailer for it at another movie like a month ago, and I saw it and I thought, hey, that seems pretty cool.
And so here we are. That's how we've come to this. And I'm always ready to talk about a movie, but I do. We've never said this on the podcast before. I do prefer to try to keep this as free for people as possible, or at least, readily accessible on like Netflix or something.
The good news is that like probably by the time anyone's actually listening to this, horror movies move from theater to like streaming services quick.
Yeah.
So it'll probably be available on something. I'm not sure what.
Yeah. So by the time you're hearing this, I'm sure it'll be readily available. But I just wanted to make that something clear. We don't talk about like what the practice here is at See For Yourself, like what's the method that we go by. But sometimes I feel like it should be stated that is something I try to be cognizant of. My first thoughts after hearing the blurb immediately is this is a Mission Impossible movie. Like, that is if the Mission Impossible if that doesn't play at some point, I'm going to be severely disappointed.
I'll be honest, I have no idea how they made so many Mission Impossibles. Because, like, the first one I think is made in 96 or 98.
It's old, yeah.
Yeah, so that's, like, almost either as old or almost as old as I am. Meaning that fucking Tom Cruise has been doing Mission Impossibles for 26, 27 years.
And, like, coming up with and performing all of these stunts, too. Like, you would think one of them would be enough to, like, break any normal man, and Tom Cruise is just...
Tom Cruise is, he does his own stunts, he hangs onto the outside of airplanes.
Yeah, he's just... I genuinely think that he's propelling the planes himself with his will to move forward. There are 6 Mission Impossible movies, and I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to predict
that there'll be a 7th.
This is the 7th one, right here. I also want to predict, and I don't think this is how it's going to go out because I know the trends of like modern horror films, but I'm hoping I can be hopeful. I'm hoping that it will open up on like kind of lighthearted, even though it's like sad circumstances.
I absolutely think it's going to be open up lighthearted because I did watch the original trailer for it, and I've got a little bit of knowledge that way, but it's been a while, so I don't really remember it. But if I remember correctly, there's like this supernatural aspect to it.
From the phone thing,
from the phone thing, he's talking to the dead victims, but also to the killer himself. There seems to be some sort of supernatural aspect to him.
Sure.
I'm not sure how that's going to play out, but...
Well, how would you guess? Take a guess.
I feel like he's going to be like some sort of like... Who was the fucking turn twine into gold type dude?
Oh, Rumpelstiltskin.
Rumpelstiltskin, yeah. I feel like it's going to be something like that.
Something like Rumpelstiltskin?
Yeah. Okay. Even though it's Ethan Hawke, and Ethan Hawke is obviously not a disfigured little dude.
Well, I don't know. He's played some pretty like interesting characters in the past. I'm very trusting of him as a...
He's a good actor. I think I've seen him playing some like villainous roles before, so I know he can do it.
Did you catch him in Moon Knight?
Moon Knight? Yeah.
He was really good in that, I thought.
I haven't finished Moon Knight. I watched about half of it, and then I caught up to it, and then it's finished since, but I haven't went back and revisited it.
Even in his first few scenes, he's great.
I remember, because the first episode where he's in the, I don't know where it is, like Swiss Alps or something. I don't know where exactly. Actually, I think it might be in Italy.
They don't make it very clear, and I'm not great with geography stuff. I couldn't do that game where people, what is it, GeoGuessr?
Yeah.
Where they give you like a picture and you're supposed to guess where on the planet it is. I couldn't do that, so I wouldn't know very well. But I trust in Ethan Hawke's acting ability and his ability to like transform into something more grotesque, more horrifying.
Yeah. I mean, he's a good bet, safe bet. My biggest fear for this, though, is that it's going to be like, did you ever watch those How I Died type movies? Where, essentially what you're watching is the ghost trying to, give hints on how they died or, solve their own murder or whatever.
There's some pretty heinous films for that, as far as,
yeah, I'm afraid it's going to be another one of those.
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of that, I guess plot device, I guess is how you would describe it. I don't think I've seen it done very well, other than maybe
There's one, and I think it was starring Chloe Moretz. That I thought that one was pretty good, but I don't remember the name of it. So it's.
Well, let's see if we can Google Chloe Moretz.
But that's just something I think that doesn't get handled well, and I think it's just also kind of a cliche after so many attempts.
If I Stay.
If I Stay, yeah. But that also, she wasn't trying to solve her murder. She was just, coming to terms with her death. No, she was a coma victim. That's what it was. Dude, it's been so long since I watched that movie.
Yeah. I'm very...
I don't think it was a horror movie, now that I think about it. Yeah, I think it was a chick flick.
I'm very 50-50. That's the reason I don't like those types of movies, because they're oftentimes used to what's the word? Pull at your heartstrings instead of
Well, no, that's I think the reason I liked that movie, because it just leaned into that, Mm-hmm. It was doing what it was obviously trying to do, and I was like, okay, that's pretty good.
What is the one that I remember the most? And this one doesn't exactly do this. It's more of a what's it called? Like the Scrooge McDuck kind of, or not Scrooge McDuck, the Scrooge sort of story where he gets taken. If you were never alive, this is how the world would be, so on and so forth.
Oh, yeah.
What is it? It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
It's a Wonderful Life kind of does this, where the guy's thinking about killing himself, and he gets, taken through all of these different versions of how the world would work without him and so on.
Yeah.
And I think that's basically what you're describing here, but sort of in, reverse order almost. And then at the end, he gets to come back to life and just, return to living a wonderful life,
Yeah.
And I think that was the one that I saw that I was like, yeah, this is pretty good. This is a good idea. And then every one I've seen after that, I was just like, God. So I am worried about that as well now. I hadn't even considered that.
No, I think it was the trailer that made me worry about that, because of the way, just the way it seemed. It seemed like, because of the supernatural aspect of it, I thought of either a Rumpelstiltskin situation or a he's already dead situation.
What if, and I'm just throwing stuff at the wall at this point. What if it's the kid is supposed to be a representation of the killer's innocence?
Yeah.
It's fighting against these voices, and the voices
aren't even... And he is the killer?
Yeah. Okay. That's a part of the killer. It's he isn't the killer. It's just that he's part of the killer's identity and his thoughts.
That'd be pretty cool. We haven't seen something like that since fucking M. Night Shyamalan, the second in the Unbreakable series.
Oh, Split.
Split. Yeah.
I was gonna say Splint, and I'm like, that's not right.
Yeah. Split was a little bit like that, where it was that horror movie, but it was also what was his name? The actual killer.
The Horde is the
Horde
given, but he has
the Horde is the killer, or the actual beast or whatever. And then there's two of his personalities that are working with it, and then basically all the other ones are either trying to stop it or not. I thought that was a pretty cool take on it.
Yeah, I honestly wish... I really liked Split. Out of all of M. Night Shyamalan's movies, I have a really good time with that one. And I think... Anya Taylor-Joy's in it, so immediately I'm super on board.
Yeah.
But I wish we'd spent more time with the horror, with the main guy.
Yeah.
And watching him interact with his different personalities throughout the day.
Well, I understand why you couldn't really spend too much time with it, because even with the amount of time that we did spend with him, we we get to a point where we've severely humanized him, and it's still trying to be a horror story.
Yeah, kind of. I do think that the horror comes from Anya Taylor-Joy's story, where she's trapped and she's trying to figure out a way to like get out, and the other girls are freaking out, and they're both getting harassed in all these different ways. And that's the horrific part of it. I think you're right. If we did follow the main character in that one for too long, or like main villain in that one for too long,
we're going to Dexterify him.
Yeah, he would just be like a normal dude at a certain point, or we'd start feeling sympathetic for him, or he'd become ridiculous, where it's like, this is just silly now.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of potential problems with that. So yeah, maybe the movie is like kind of towing that line very, very, very well. If this movie's going for something similar, or something like what I described, or whatever have you, I think that's something that's worth bringing up, is like it's a fine line you have to walk when you're trying to do the "I was dead the whole time" reveal at the end, or the child was actually a part of his psyche the whole time.
It's been a lot harder since M. Night Shyamalan did it in the fucking Sixth Sense.
And a lot of people rag on him for that, but like when he was starting out, he was a really cheap horror, or he was a really cheap movie maker. He made very budget friendly films, and I think that's where he should have stayed. Not like holistically budget friendly. Like, I think there were more than hundreds of thousands of dollars he would use on these movies, but like a lot less money than like the Avatar movie got.
Yeah, the Avatar movie was, I don't even know if it was M. Night Shyamalan's fault. Well, I guess it had to be, but
there's a lot of different theories on what happened there. A lot of times studios will do a thing where they'll do, you give us one and we'll give you one.
Yeah.
So like if you're willing to take a movie that not a lot of people want to take and you make that movie for us, we'll pay, or we'll produce, we'll make sure that a movie you want to get made will get made. And that's usually when like...
Well, from what I understood, that would be like him taking one, or him, him giving them one. Because wasn't it like the character who played Katara, wasn't like her like grandfather or father or something that essentially pushed for the film to be made?
Yeah, that is what I'm saying here.
Like, literally hired her to play Katara.
He got told, like, hey, if we're going to do, we give you one, you give us one, the one we want from you, like, the one that nobody wants to do is this Avatar movie with this specific cast and this specific writer and all this other shit. A famous example of that is probably, and again, this is speculation, we don't know for sure. They don't typically come out and say, oh yeah, this is a movie that got forced on me by the studio. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's in their contract somewhere. They're not allowed to say that. It probably looks pretty bad. Old Boy is a famous Korean film, and it got remade in the remade for an American audience, and nobody wanted to do it because like every director who's worth their shit knows that Old Boy is a masterpiece. It's one of the greatest films ever made, and nobody wanted to do it, so they got Spike Lee to do it, which is a really weird choice.
And then it was a masterpiece again.
It was terrible. It was pretty universally panned. Not terrible. It was a very, very workable film. It's just not nearly as good as the original, which is kind of what you're afraid of going in.
Yeah.
And the idea here is that the one that he got in return was Black Klansman, which the name alone, by the way, the name of this has 3 Ks in it right in the middle, where Black and Klansman come together.
And I don't know what you'd have to like give for me to give that.
To be fair, a movie called Black Klansman is terrifying to look at until you like pan down and it says directed by Spike Lee, and then you're like, oh, okay, it's fine. It's fine. He knows what he's doing with that shit. Yeah, I would trust Spike Lee to make any movie on the topic of like Black history, Black culture, any of that stuff.
Yeah,
I think he's got it figured out.
I'm looking it up right now. I think I'm going to have to add it to my watch list.
It's got Adam Driver in it, and he's pretty great.
Yeah, it's there's no space at all. It's just Black KKK Klansman.
Yep. And it's apparently a very good movie.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's frustrating to watch him do interviews for Black Klansman, and where he's like really excited, and you can tell there's like a passion for him. And then watching him do an interview for Old Boy, where he's like, yeah, I know about the other movie, and I'm going to try to pay respect to it, but do my own thing. And I'm like, oh, God, these are the most canned answers I've ever heard. Like, they clearly wrote down, like, if they ask you if you know about the original, you say yes, and I'm going to do my own thing.
Well, okay. You tell him no. He's just like, I wrote this. We talked about
I'm going in blind.
I'm going in blind.
Yeah, I have no clue. I heard about this podcast, See For Yourself, where they just go in blind, and I'm doing it now, too.
But on the other end.
In reverse.
Yeah.
I made a bunch of predictions about what I thought the original would have in it, And then I just put those in my movie.
Right. So, like, whenever we go watch this movie, what do you think the best thing? What is your highest hopes for how this movie was going to go? Like, if it could be what you're envisioning right now as like the best version of this, what do you think that'd be?
So I always really like it when horror movies can save on budget by like utilizing like one location.
Yeah.
I like seeing that, and I like seeing it done creatively. A lot of times it's not done.
And it seems like it should be able to hit on that one because, like, mostly I feel like we're going to be in a cell, you know?
Yeah. I feel like as a realistic expectation to put out, creatively using one location, I think is something they could do here. I don't know if they will. I don't have anything suggesting one way or the other than that blurb, but I'm hopeful. I don't know how they would creatively do this because, as you said, like, it does kind of just sound like this takes place in a basement.
Yeah.
And, like, how do you creatively use, like, one space for that? Maybe they could do some, like some single take shots. I'm always happy to see those. Try to keep an eye out for those. It'd probably be pretty easy.
I mean, maybe it's not just in a basement, but it's also, like, in the house. Like, he finds a way out of the basement, but he can't find a way out of the house, you know?
I imagine also to establish stakes for, like, oh, hey, the killer's a killer. They'll probably have to go to other places showing him killing other people.
Yeah.
I am curious to find out. Here's a question I had as I'm reading the blurb. Why does he keep this kid alive?
Don't know. I have no idea.
It seems like a liability, and I'm curious to explore that aspect of their relationship.
Like, yeah, it seems like, from what I remember of the trailer, the voices that he hears are other kids, too. So maybe he's just like a kidnap and kill. Because, you know, all serial killers have their own, like, you know,
methodologies,
method and whatever. Thinking about, like, the Trinity Killer and Dexter. You know, he started it off by kidnapping a kid. And then that was, I think, also his last kill or something, or maybe the first kill to start the cycle, but, like, he kept the kid for a while.
So do you have a guess as to, like, what his methodology for that is? Like, why does he keep the kid? What's the reason for it? Or do you think they'll explain it?
I think it's going to be some Rumpelstiltskin shit.
Okay.
That's
like, I'm going to your parents and asking them, like, what my name is and so on. Torturing your parents, basically.
Torturing your parents, or, like, you know, maybe I do remember there being some sort of, like, hint at there being some supernatural stuff with the killer himself. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I know, like, child's blood is, like, useful in, like, you know, a lot of the, like, dark magics and stuff and blood magics, especially in, like, modern, like, storytelling and stuff. So, you know, maybe that's part of it.
That'd be pretty cool if they took this to, like, a place of, like actual magic stuff. That'd be cool.
Yeah. But of course, I'm a nerd at heart, so, you know, I incorporate magic as many times as I can.
Hoping for something fantastical other than a superhero. Yeah. Oh, man. What if that's it? God, what if that's it? He's actually just a superhero.
Yeah.
The main guy is like, oh, no, I'm not magical or religious or anything like that or spiritual in any way. Nope, I have superpowers.
I have superpowers, and I need children's blood to keep them.
What if this is the first movie in the, like, the New Mutants, like, franchise for Marvel? Because I think
the New Mutants was the first movie in the New Mutants franchise.
That's not true. Sony owns that.
Was it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah, that was one of the last ones made by Sony for no reason. Yeah, they just... And you can tell, because when you watch the New Mutants, it sucks.
Yeah.
So, like, that's how you know it's made by Sony.
Anya Taylor-Joy's in it.
Anya Taylor-Joy is the redeeming factor in that one. And her character got screwed because her character's fairly interesting, and I don't know why they went the way they did in the movie.
Yeah, I remember her character, like, she did, like, some, like, she could jump at will into, like, an alternate reality or alternate future or something like that.
Yeah.
And then pull, like, weapons back with her. And, like, that's so fucking cool.
Everything about that is just, like, nerd people everywhere are like, fuck yes. You can jump into a D&D campaign and jump out with your loot. That's dope.
Yeah.
I remember the voice she did, like, when, like, talking to her little, like, pet, or her little, plush dragon thing, or talking as it, or whatever.
Yeah.
That voice was awful, and I don't know if that's Anya Taylor-Joy's fault or not, and I'm going to go ahead and say it's not her fault. Anya Taylor-Joy is perfect and can do no wrong. Yeah, that movie was bizarre as shit for me. It's definitely made by Sony, so unfortunately, this might be the New Mutants for... This is just like the first villain.
Well, we'll know in the opening if we see the comic book, you know, made Marvel Studios.
What if that's the next big play for Marvel Studios, where they're just like, all right, movies for this phase.
You have to sit through the credits to find out if it's Marvel or not.
Yeah, we put the Marvel thing at the end, and then then you see the Marvel, and then they do a post-credit scene where, like, you know, Captain America shows up and he's like, all right, guys, so basically for this new phase, you got duped. So you've been duped by Marvel Studios. Which movie does that? I think it's Homecoming.
What the Spider-Man?
Right? Yeah, it's Homecoming.
Like, so you found yourself in detention.
Yeah. That would be awesome and terrifying. I could never feel safe going to a movie again. That's the real horror aspect of this movie. The rest of the movie is just like a standard Marvel movie where all the jokes are like they're towing that line between like, ooh, that's kind of risky, but like not too risky.
Yeah.
And then you're like, man, that movie wasn't scary at all. And then the end credits scene is just like, we tricked you into watching a Marvel movie.
They've been putting for this movie, The Black Phone. They've been putting ads up online, and I haven't watched the like trailers of them. But the reason I haven't watched the trailers of them is because the ads start with those like, test audience reactions. And it's like, man, this is what Paranormal Activity did to like market itself. Mm-hmm. And it's like after that, I just kind of like it doesn't do it for me. It doesn't make me any more interested in it.
Oh God, oh my God, that's something I really hate. I'm really worried every time I go to see a horror movie now that it's just going to be ripping off of like a popular horror movie or a horror movie that made a lot of money.
Yeah.
And they're like just going to be like borrowing stuff from that, but without any like intelligent understanding of why they did those things or why it was like popular or useful at the time.
I mean, I don't think it's going to be ripping off Paranormal Activity. It's usually like the same marketing scheme, you know.
Sure.
The live reaction of the audience members.
And that enough is like, that's fine if it's completely separate from the movie, I guess. But like, that enough isn't enough to scare me for the rest of the film, like having stuff like that, like incorporated throughout. Was there anything else you wanted to touch on before we go ahead and...
No, I think we'll, go watch the movie.
All right, yeah. So
come back.
Let's call this the break point, and we'll just move it on out to the movie after. Okay, and we are back from watching the movie, and I think we both have quite a few thoughts. There was a lot to be said for that film. Brian, do you want to start us off?
Yeah. So first off, the Rumpelstiltskin stuff didn't happen, which I think we're all sad about that.
Was there a point in the film where you thought it was going to go that way?
No, not once it actually started, because I realized that like what I had been thinking about, the supernatural aspect of it, I remembered it was just that he was faking being a magician or something in the fucking trailer or whatever that I watched. I was like, oh yeah, that was the magic thing that he was doing. I just remembered a bit of magic.
Wait, was he faking being a magician, or was he like really a magician? Because he has like the van that says abracadabra and everything on it.
I mean, I don't know if he was faking or not. He did say he's an amateur magician or whatever, so
yeah,
it doesn't show that part of his life. So
yeah, we don't really get to see, but that's commitment to the bit to like have like a van with abracadabra on it, and your brother sees it and knows about it. So like, it's not like you can just have that and not be have that and have like an excuse to be like, yeah, I just have this van for no reason. Basically, I'm not a magician, but I have it, and
the brother is another thing that I think is weird, because I just do not see how he was able to get like by with any of that shit while his brother was
in the house,
living with him in the house.
Yeah, because it takes a lot of setup, and the kids, like as the ghost kids were talking to Finn, they were basically explaining like, I fucked this place up while I was living here.
Yeah.
So like it seems like the brother might have noticed at some point, and this is the brother's house. So
is it the brother's house?
Oh no, that's right. Max the brother was only watching it while the other.
He was. I think they established that he was just like crashing there for a few days because of some unknown reason, family reason.
What was the scariest part of the movie for you?
Scariest? I don't know if the movie actually got scary.
Okay.
Yeah, no. Give me your scariest moment.
The scariest part of the movie for me was that in 1978, a man could potentially have a job as a magician and own 2 different homes.
Across the street from one another.
Yeah. In 1978. that could happen. Now, you would, in order to own 2 homes in like a nice area, oh God.
He had a job as an amateur magician. Of course that raised his salary up enough to have 2 separate homes.
Yeah.
One that he used entirely for the purpose of burying children.
Yeah, there's nothing in that house. That was another thing. Like, did his brother not know about the other home? Seems like, yeah, he would probably just keep that secret, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're burying kids in your other home, I don't think you bring that to the light. You know?
Tell anybody about that,
Yeah, it's like, them damn neighbors, wonder what that stench is,
Yeah, so I guess the only time he goes into that house is at night, I guess?
Yeah.
And then he just, like, waits until it seems like nobody's watching him. But, like, somebody had to have seen him go in there at some point.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The one thing that I don't get is that, like, the time that the kid escapes,
sure,
he runs out the house and he's screaming and everything, and there's all this noise and everything. And then by the time he gets him back into the basement, does he not throw him down? And his brother, like, starts yelling at him, hey, what's all the ruckus or whatever?
Yeah, and he's like, it's the dog barking is his excuse for it. How did he not wake up at any other point during that?
Yeah. Like, how did you not hear any of this other shit?
I guess it's the
kid screaming,
So, like, up until then, he had been completely silent, right? Like, leaving the house.
I guess he didn't start screaming until, like, he was already chasing him with the van.
Yeah. And he's like, even as he's running from the van, he's still pretty quiet. He starts yelling, like, once the guy is, like, clearly about to catch him.
Yeah.
So at that point, you could imagine Max, like, potentially being woken up by that noise. Like, something loud just happened. What was that noise? And then, he hears, like, the brother, like, come home and everything. And the kid is, like, knocked out, so he's not making any more noise. And he's like, hey, man, what was that noise? What's going on? He's like, shut up, dude. It's just the dog. And that's enough of an answer.
Yeah. I mean, and also that kid, he was going to get caught anyway because he was running with the road. Like, if he was smarter, he would have ducked behind one of the other houses.
Yeah, gotten into their, like, backyard or something or other, like, at any point,
And then just started yelling.
Yeah.
Started yelling in somebody's backyard. Yeah, they're going to come look at it.
Yeah, my question is like, it seemed like he was running for a pretty long ways. How far did he go, like, without trying to stop at somebody's porch and just bang on the door?
No, it looked like he, like, barely cleared, like, the yard by the time that he had pulled out.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is it felt like he was... The amount of time that they were filming it felt like longer than how far it seems like he got.
Yeah, because you got to think, this little kid running, he was booking it, but, like...
The yard wasn't huge or anything. It's not like there was a lot of space in between these houses or anything,
Yeah, but it was still, like, suburbia. So, like, suburbia and, like, I think it was Denver, Colorado.
It was Denver, yeah.
In the 70s. There's probably a decent amount of space between the houses. Not quite like it is today, where there's...
I hear your argument. It just doesn't sway me at all. I feel like he should have been able to make it to a house, the front porch and everything. I don't feel the same way.
He stayed on the road. That's what I was just saying, though. Like, he stayed not on the road, but on the sidewalk. Yeah. Running down the sidewalk. Yeah. Like, I wouldn't even have stopped at somebody's front porch. I would have ducked behind their house.
Yeah.
Because, like, even then, even if you duck behind their house, that guy's got to chase you on foot at that point, because... Van's not going back there. And if it does, then he's got some explaining to do,
Yeah, and if he shows up in somebody's backyard or somebody's, like, the space in between their house in the middle of the night, it's like, what the fuck are you doing back there, dude?
Yeah. Was a kid just screaming? Or, why you hold a knife to the kids through?
Yeah. I think that the answer is just that, like, maybe back in the 1970s, there wasn't as much, like, light, like, because, like, nowadays, like, there's lights everywhere, like, illuminating different areas. So back then it was a lot darker and you could just, like, jump on top of a kid and, like, lay there and it would be kind of hard to tell,
Yeah.
I know that, like, in a lot of the places that I've lived, the, like, streets were, like, pretty well illuminated even at, like, nighttime. So maybe it just wasn't that way in 1978. I'm not sure. Overall, I know that the movie was trying to do, like, a lot of, like, biblical references and I just didn't feel like they were very well done in particular.
Well, what were the biblical references you saw?
So, like, the brother kills the other brother, Cain and Abel. The dog's name is Samson, who's a biblical character. The dog also sort of plays the part of Cerberus guarding the gates of the underworld.
Oh. You think that might have been more of a throw to Son of Sam than it was to...
I'm sorry, what?
You think that might have been more of a throw to Son of Sam than it was to, like, the Bible?
I'm unfamiliar.
Son of Sam, the killer in New York. It was New York, right? In whatever year, where he originally he tried to blame it on his neighbor's dog, Sam, who was apparently telling him that he needed to kill people, or he, I guess, heard it in his barks at night or something like that. That he needed to go out and kill these people.
Huh. I'm unfamiliar with this entirely. That's an interesting thing.
You don't know about the Son of Sam?
No.
Oh, okay. He's very famous serial killer.
Yeah, no, I haven't. The reason I bring up the biblical stuff is so much of the rest of the film is concerned with
Yeah, I just figured it's an actual dog, and the dog was what was getting blamed for what he was trying to blame it on.
Yeah. I'm out here tackling a child in the middle of the night, threatening to gut him, and it's actually just the dog making these noises, not me.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that could very much be a thing. I know that Samson's character in the Bible is just a really strong guy who loses all his powers.
Samson in the Bible is a strong man who had long hair that was never cut.
Yeah.
And he's tempted by Jezebel, which is why calling someone a Jezebel is like calling them a whore or whatever.
A temptress, yeah.
Yeah, because of Jezebel tempting Samson and then cutting his hair after he fell asleep, which made him lose his strength.
Yeah.
Which allowed whatever assholes were attacking, the place that he was guarding to come in and slay him.
I noticed a lot of those biblical references, but I just don't feel like they really did anything with them.
Yeah.
So it's easy. I think it would be very easy for somebody to hear me saying these things and just go I don't think they were actually trying to make biblical references.
Yeah.
And I agree. If you make a reference to something and you don't do anything with it, is it even still a reference?
Well, just like the Bible has the answers for everything in life, that idea that Christians have that you can find relevancy with a story in the Bible for just about anything. You pretty much can, because the Bible covers a large sum of stuff. So
sure.
I think that might be part of the problem with what you're seeing there. It's you're seeing a relevance that was probably unintentional.
So Max's character didn't have to be his brother. He could have just been a house sitter.
Yeah.
So they put that in there on purpose.
No, I think it did have to be his brother or some sort of family member, because if you watch the timeline of events, it doesn't make sense for him to have kept that kid alive for as long as he did, because it seemed like it was about a kid a week that was getting grabbed and killed or whatever, and he was there for several days. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
It seems like most of the kids were kind of getting grabbed and dying within a day or so, where he had a couple more days than they did. And I think that's because his brother was living with him, which bought him some time, because he was having to figure out, okay, how can I do this without, Max catching me? See what I mean? I think that was part of what gave him a little bit of the edge.
Yeah, that was something that I wish they had explored more. Why is the killer so he's talking to Finn as if he's some kind of special kid in some way, but he doesn't really have any reason to feel that way that we get indicated of, other than what you just said, where his brother is staying with him. But his brother's staying with him because he's out of town right now, but he's not out of town. He's still in town, so he's just sort of convinced his brother he's out of town, but then he comes back to town. I don't know why.
Did he say that it was because he's out of town? I thought that something had happened with his brother, in his brother's life, and that made him need a place to crash. I thought that was what was being portrayed.
I don't remember there being a line indicating that. I know that he said, Max said about the grabber man to the cops, he said, I'm watching his house while he's not here right now. I don't know if he said
I think he said he was at work.
So I don't know if he says he's at work. I know he mentions that he's not here right now.
Whenever it showed that scene, I immediately knew that it's not that guy, but also that guy's so fucking dumb that it's probably that house. And then it pans down and shows going the floorboards in it being the house. I was like, okay, yeah.
There were so many weird transitions in that movie, because there's a lot of strange transitions for some reason.
Yeah.
That when they transitioned that way from upstairs and then to downstairs, just panning down basically.
Yeah.
I thought I was oh, okay, they're in the same house here. And then I was Or maybe not. Maybe this is just another one of those weird transitions.
Yeah.
And that is bad filmmaking, I think, by definition. I'm not trying to say this is a bad movie, just that like that specific thought in my head where I'm not certain if that's what they're telling me, you should be able to like see that and know for sure.
Well, another thing I want to point out is what was up with the layout of this house, because he's down in the basement, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yet he somehow digs into a cooler, which means that there is a second
basement,
adjacent basement to this one that he has access to.
Yeah.
The house layout doesn't make any sense to me at all.
And didn't they say that the cooler was in a like a storage?
A storage shed. Yeah. It says this cooler leads to a storage shed. It's like, but you're in a fucking basement.
Yeah.
Like,
you're below ground right now.
Yeah, you're below ground. Where? What storage shed?
Yeah. How many storage sheds are underground? Or how many storage sheds have basements?
Unless he had maybe like a fallout shelter or something.
But why would you have a fallout shelter and like a concrete basement?
Yeah.
That's weird. Yeah, I agree. That is an odd thing.
No, I just thought it didn't make any sense at all. Like, who would design a house this way or design any part of the property this way?
Yeah. So there is a possibility here that the basement was bigger at one point and he just closed off a section of it.
Oh, that's probably what it is. And then maybe he has access to he has an access to like a separate half of it.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes a little bit more sense.
Like there's two ways down into the basement and he just cut off half of it basically.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
But even that, like 2 ways into the basement seems a little odd. Most like basement entrances, there's just one. But I guess if you have a big basement, it makes sense to have 2 entrances.
Well, yeah, if you have that size of a basement, I would imagine you probably have an outer entrance and like an inside entrance. Like the inside entrance is obviously what he closed off for the cell portion of it.
Yeah.
But even then, wouldn't that raise questions if your brother goes down and you're like, hey, wasn't this basement much larger when you bought this place?
Yeah, you basically have to explain like, oh yeah, I turned the other side of it into a game room, and it's like, oh cool, I'll go to the game room. That'd be fun.
Game room, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh no! I meant my studio where I work. All I do is you do magic work over there. Like you just test out magic equipment. That's cool. I'd like to check that out.
Yeah, like give me something that I wouldn't like to check out.
It's like no, you can't check it out. A magician never reveals his secrets, and maybe Max just like believes that. He's like, oh yeah, you're right. I don't want to ruin your.
Max was pretty dumb. Yeah,
I could see it. That was.
I think that was one of the funnier parts, though, is that Max apparently is crashing with his brother for like the week or whatever, and during that time he sets up a full investigation of the grabber.
So what I didn't like about that was that like it's okay for someone to be like not believed by the police for being like kind of like kooky or behaving awkwardly.
Yeah,
that's okay. That's enough. But for them to do that, and he's like behaving awkwardly and strangely, and like the cops are kind of just like, okay, dude, chill out. And then also to have him doing coke. Like, why? Why add that as well?
No. I just love the blind faith that the officers had in that little girl.
That's probably the second scariest thing in this film. Is that
just like, oh, this little girl had a dream.
Get the entire force together. We're going downtown.
We're not going to just investigate this ourselves. We're going to get several squad cars.
Yeah, like 4 other cars to come with us.
So we can kick this door in.
Yes, well, no warrant. It's 1978, so the cops were basically cowboys. They can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
And they still can. But yeah, it's like you're just gonna kick in this door and fucking investigate this house with no reason to other than.
What is it like? I heard screaming inside.
Yeah. Oh my god. Okay, so what is the most redeeming quality of this film for you? The thing that you're just like, that was really, really, really good.
I think the casting is one of the more redeeming qualities, because both the main child and Ethan Hawke, I thought they did very well in their roles.
I think the acting is really well done.
The only complaint I had with the acting was for the first half of the movie, the little girl seemed like she was just reading like lines, and then you get to this one point where there's a pretty good scene with her. I forget exactly what happens, but from then on, like she like breaks down in two. I think it's right whenever he gets grabbed or whatever. There's a pretty good scene with her reacting to that, and then from that point on, her acting, I feel like, improved dramatically.
I disagree. I think she was great the whole time. I was going to say, like, as a standout performance, I think that little girl did a great job.
I just, for the first, like, maybe not even half, but a quarter of the movie, it just kind of felt like she was reading lines. You know what I mean? Like,
what about the scene where the cops come visit her in school? And that's pretty funny because she's calling them fart knockers, and that's pretty funny. But also when she goes home and her dad is like beating her, and
that was a good scene.
That was very well done.
And I'm not saying that like not even then, but I'm saying like some of the scenes with her,
like when she's walking home,
when they weren't like emotionally driven, it just seemed like she was just like reading lines. But then whenever she was having to do like an emotional performance, she was like killing it.
I don't know. I think that in the scenes where you're not really like, you're kind of just like going through everyday shit, like walking home with your brother and saying like, oh yeah, I'm going to my friend Stacy's house or whatever. And he goes, oh, okay, I'll take care of Dad. Even his delivery wasn't good. And I don't think anybody's delivery would be terribly like stand out as like good in that scene because it's just not, there's nothing for you to be invested in here.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not expecting them to be like super like, you know, invested in it, but like it just didn't feel like a natural conversation. You know what I mean? I
do think that some of those scenes for me, because like based on the things that are happening in the movie, I'm like wondering like when is one of these main characters going to get abducted? Because I try to go in and like, you know, the blurb can say one thing, but still the first like half of the movie can be something entirely different because a lot of times blurbs will only describe.
That's something we brought up in the first half of this is like how much time do you think is going to be invested in just this cell, you know?
Yeah.
And how they're going to deal with that. And
yeah,
I guess it makes sense to have like the side plot be like, okay, the sister has some sort of psychic abilities and I guess he does too. And they're like linked, which helps her find him and helps him also escape. Because if you notice, the phone rings when she's asleep. The phone rang most of the times whenever she was asleep. Even whenever she was falling asleep in class, that was when he was having conversations on the phone. Because I think she was sort of the barrier that was linking them. Because I think it was the idea was that she was dead. He might have had some sort of psychic abilities, but she had way more.
So I thought the thing was going to be, because I noticed also that like a lot of the times they would transition a scene from him talking to somebody on the phone and then transition over to her waking up or starting her day or something or other. I thought the thing was going to be, in my head I was like, oh, I think the thing might be you have to be close to death in order to like access this like psychic ability somehow. And like when you're asleep, as far as living people go, that's pretty close to death. And that's why she can see these like sort of discombobulated visions while she's asleep. And there was that scene, and this is where I started getting the idea. There's that scene where she's in the bathtub.
Yeah.
And she kind of like has like a vision or something and like pokes her head up and like gets up from it. And I thought she was like, because like that's what her dad tells her basically is like, you know, your mom had these visions and
had these dreams.
Yeah, and then she would.
They're just dreams.
It made her kill herself eventually, and I'm like, maybe that's how her mom started like accessing her powers more. Is like the closer she would get to death, the more like she could access her abilities.
Yeah.
And because the kid Finn is like in this basement where this guy is basically, he knows that the guy is going to kill him.
Yeah.
That's why he's able to access the powers.
I mean, that's a pretty good take.
I don't think that's what they did with it, but I like that as an idea.
Yeah. But no, I mean, if you ever, I don't know if you'll ever explore this movie again.
I probably will, knowing me.
But like, pay attention to when she's sleeping and when he's getting a phone call, and it's always she'll be waking up right after he got a phone call.
I remember that being true for most of it. I'm willing to agree with you tentatively right now because as I'm recalling it, yes, that did happen very frequently.
Yeah.
But it's the kind of thing you'd have to like go through a second time with a fine-tooth comb to verify, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but then she would also be dreaming of the child that he had the conversation with.
Yeah.
And that was every time that he had the conversation with somebody, except for when he had the conversation with his friend. When he had the conversation with his friend, that was the only time.
Robin.
Robin.
Yeah.
That was the only time in which they were both definitely awake. And I feel like that was part of his sort of psychic connection. Probably was easier because he was friends with the guy, you know.
Sure. So, like, I guess I should probably talk about this because it's kind of like one of my bigger things for it is, so the movie's a Blumhouse movie, and I've talked about on this podcast a handful of times about how I feel about Blumhouse. And this movie did a lot of the Blumhouse things where it's just unnecessary jump scares for no reason. But I did feel like the movie was also trying to condition us to, like, not think that they would always go for the jump scare when they could.
Yeah.
Because there were scenes where they would just have the ghost behind him and not have the big loud noise or not have the fast transition to it or anything like that. And it would just show the ghost and it's, like, totally normal. But then there were also a lot of scenes, all the scenes where people were reacting like, oh my God. were the ones where it would do the fast transition, show the ghost, and big loud noise right after. Like the when she's like bicycling in the rain and the lightning comes down and all the ghosts appear on the street, and it's like nothing scary is actually really happening here. She already has seen these dead people in her dreams and everything. She's not getting any new information. It's just because it happened very quickly and there was a loud noise.
Yeah.
This isn't actually scary.
Yeah.
And Blumhouse is sort of known for like abusing that trick to try to make a not scary movie a lot scarier, or make a movie that is actually scary somehow more scarier.
Yeah. See, that was the issue, is that like for whatever reason they wanted to lean into like the ghost being part of the like scary stuff, which didn't make any sense, because that's what you're talking about. Like the jump scares were just like, okay, this is the ghost. You know, the true terror from the movie should have came from being with the serial killer.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, I feel like if I had done it, I would have left more time with each individual like kid to be in that basement or whatever, and just not had the brother been a part of it at all. Just be like, okay, so this is his ritual.
Yeah. It also would have been really cool to see, like, I think that's a problem with modern audiences. They don't want to see kids dying. They're cool with being aware that kids are dying, but they just don't want to fucking see it.
Yeah.
They don't want to be like, they don't want to stew in it. So if they did that, where it's like, all right, we're going to have the first kid get abducted, we're going to spend like 15 minutes with him, and then he'll die. And then we'll go to the next kid, and that could have been really cool too, to have the phone be there.
Not even like 15 minutes, but like, the first kid gets abducted, we see him like in the like basement or whatever, and then like maybe we see what happens to him. But all of that can be just within a couple, maybe 5 minutes.
I think another scary thing that they don't touch on at all is how this guy basically got to go around in normal society and nobody knew that he was like a creepy abductor guy.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
They don't reveal anything really about what this guy is, which I think was an intentional thing, because if you look at the credits, he is listed as the Grabber.
Yes.
He's never given a name. He's never any of that. Mm-hmm. And I think that is a kind of a smart move on Blumhouse's part, because like when you think about serial killers, or you think about like slasher movies and everything, everybody like knows the name, and they like almost fetishize it, which I think is a sort of I don't want to call it an unhealthy way to an unhealthy way to view these people, but like I do think it is kind of that.
So you think if they had named him?
So I think not naming him, and like keeping him as just like, oh, this is the Grabber, and he's just this bad boogeyman type. I think that like that doesn't give him enough identity to be fetishized in that way. You know what I mean?
I don't know. I think if we make our killers mystical in any way, we take away the fact that like they're just people.
Yeah.
They're just people that have like a part of their brain that doesn't work the way that the rest of our brain works, and it's become violent. And like I prefer the version of this story where we just show him like living out in town and like going around and like doing kids like magic shows basically. Yeah.
And there's no reason why they shouldn't, or they couldn't have done that too, because like they had a good cast for it. Ethan Hawke could have delivered that. Yeah,
I think he could have. Well, he does. Like every time we see him in that like persona of like lighthearted, like, oh, I spilled all my groceries. Look at all these groceries.
Yeah. I didn't think like while we were watching this, I thought that made me realize that like, oh, Ethan Hawke would have been a good Joker, because like his delivery of all of that, and like the way he is, like that's on par with like almost Heath Ledger Joker. Like,
I don't want to say that he's like drawing from the Joker for this performance, but I do think that like there were points, I agree, where I was watching it and I was thinking like, this is kind of Joker-esque.
Yeah.
And I hate that that's a lens we have to look at movies through. But we're living in a post Heath Ledger Joker world, and like we can't not.
Well, even
Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah, Joaquin Phoenix's Joker. It was a little bit like a mix between Heath Ledger's and Joaquin Phoenix's, mixed with like child murderer. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which I think that would be an interesting way to take the Joker as a child murderer, basically. Which and that hits home for Batman.
Yeah.
Like he cares about that specifically.
Yeah.
So that would be an interesting way to go about it. I do think that they limit the amount of time we get with the other kids because of how hard it is to make them scary.
Yeah.
I think most of the time they're like kind of just like heartwarming and helpful.
Yeah.
Some of them are like less like kind-hearted than others, but really there's only the one that's kind of a douche. The rest of them are just like, I'm trying to help you out, kid. You're gonna die. Be safe out there. And then 2 of them even are like close friends of his, people he really liked.
Yeah. Well, they weren't close friends of his. The one kid was just like a guy he played baseball with one time, and he had said some nice things to him. And then the other one was actually his friend.
Yeah. The ending of the movie where he goes back to fucking school and everybody's like, he killed a guy. That's so cool. That was weird to me.
But that also, like, to me, it's a weird way to end the movie, but to me that also made, like, a lot of sense, because, like, if you actually killed a serial killer called the Grabber, and you were, like, 12 years old going back to school, that's how people would treat you. Like, that guy over there killed the Grabber. Holy shit, better not get his way.
Yeah, I just don't like that as the ending for the film. That feels fucking weird. Yeah. I don't even know if I like having it in the film at all. I feel like you're right. That probably is how middle schoolers would like behave, or even like high schoolers too. Probably.
I thought it was a funny end. I didn't understand it being the end of the horror movie, because I was expecting, it being Blumhouse, them trying to set up some sort of sequel or something just in case.
I thought that they were going to do another jump scare at the end, because Blumhouse is notorious for like, we'll just throw a jump scare in at the end right before. So the credits.
That was a little bit of a curveball in itself. Was
there a point where you thought like there was going to be a twist like right at the end? Did you have any theories for that as you were watching it?
No, not really. I don't know. For the most part, it did feel like it was going to be like a self-contained story.
Sure.
Because I felt like if any twist was going to happen, well, then he probably wasn't going to kill the guy, but he killed the guy. So I don't know. I just didn't see it. Like, I think if we see any more of the Grabber, it would be in like some sort of like haunted house type thing or something, maybe in the future.
So I had 2 theories as I'm watching it. I thought, one, the Grabber was going to get away and it would be blamed on Max. I thought that's what was going to happen. Like, the Grabber would kill Finn, get away with it, like run away, and then Max would be left there, and the cops are already a little suspicious of him because of how strangely he was acting. He was high on coke, and now they find a dead body in the basement of the house that he was in. And it's like, well, it was clearly Max. We're cops. We don't need to do any more detective work here.
I know that would have been a possibility too, but like the way that the movie was going at that point, it just seemed like it was like, you know how you can feel from like the lightheartedness of like, oh, we're all pitching in to help. Like, I just didn't think that they would, go the other way with that. Like, I don't think that Blumhouse is that big of a risk taker.
Sure, yeah.
To be like,
this kid we followed for like the last hour and some change that
we built up all this time, being like, yeah, you're gonna get out of here, kid. Yeah, it's all up to you.
Big heartwarming send off.
We've given you all of the tools you need, and then just have him just like get his ass kicked and eaten by a dog. Whenever he showed the dog, I thought that might have been what would happen, because I was like, oh.
He did not train for a dog killing him.
Yeah, he didn't train for a dog killing him. And I was like, oh, he's just going to let the dog loose. But he didn't do that. He tied the dog up.
And then the other one I had was when they went to the first house and the kids weren't in it, I thought for sure, I started thinking like, oh, fuck, like he's already dead and the Grabber has gotten away with it, and we've been being shown stuff that's already happened like some time ago. Because we don't get a good understanding of like what's literally happening in sequential time. It's just showing us events and then cutting to other events and then cutting to other events, and we assume it's all happening chronologically, but that could not be true. It's a very common thing in film.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe he already got away with this. And then the kid starts walking out of the other house, and I'm like, well, he still could have gotten away with it, and this is just the kid's like ghost.
Yeah. I whenever it was showing that too, I did briefly think that. But I also thought, no, these idiots are at the wrong place, because there was no furniture while they were going around.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, these idiots are at the wrong place, or
these idiots who believed a little
girl. Like, I thought that might have been pretty funny too, as if like they're just like, yeah, we blindly followed this little girl to this fucking house, and then he walks out of the house, fucking 9 neighborhoods over.
I wish that was a line that was given, because I kept expecting the cops to like explain to the dad why they're accosting this little girl over like murders that are happening in the area, because that's a fucked up thing to talk to a little girl about, especially in the 1970s.
Yeah.
So I thought that they maybe would have explained to somebody, or the camera, or the dad, or somebody, like, hey, we don't have any other leads. We're literally down to whatever we can get.
Whatever this little girl tells us, yeah.
And that would explain why they're just taking whatever somebody can say as, like, the gospel truth and, like, following it because they have literally nothing else. Which
I loved at the end where they're interviewing the captain or whatever, and he says the lines of, and these are the two detectives that cracked the case. And I was like, what the fuck? What, cracked it wide open?
I kept expecting them to be like, yeah, we put in a lot of hard hours, like
put in a lot of hard hours harassing this little girl. Finally, she gave up
and told us all the information.
No, she's not in custody, nor did she have anything to do with it.
That's the other thing, is the girl points out in the beginning, like, it's ridiculous to insinuate that a little girl would, like, kill these people, but it's also ridiculous to insinuate a little girl would have anything to offer based on her dreams. Like, you get the initial interest in it, like, hey, a little girl said that you had a dream about something, like, did you really see... Because they kept asking, like, what aren't you telling us? Tell us what we're missing here.
Why aren't you telling us? You know, you saw something, didn't you?
Yeah, like, you're saying it's a dream, because that's what kids do when they don't want to admit that they know something or that they did something or whatever the fuck. And, like, that made sense. That part of it I was willing to buy. But then after that, when, like, she just calls them randomly, it's like, I know the address, and they're like, okay, how?
Fucking 5 squad.
And the second time they go to her house and everything, after she got beat over that first thing. And why the fuck did they call her dad? Like, I guess I understand why they called her dad. I guess that makes sense.
I mean, I think they have to talk to her, don't they?
Yeah, probably. Maybe not in the 1970s. I don't fucking know. You could just go and take the kid out for ice cream and pick her up from school and, like, just take her down the block.
Same rules apply to the police.
But, like, I wish that... I wish that they had done a little bit more explaining why the cops were so willing to, like, repeatedly come to this girl and be like, tell us about your dreams, little girl.
What are we missing? Where is he?
Some of the single greatest detective work. Truly, like, the kind of stuff Batman aspires to, I think.
The two detectives that cracked this case wide open.
Yeah, they figured it all out, man. They put all the pieces together. Yeah, I didn't love that. Something cinematography-wise earlier was bad. But I do think that, like, them setting up the idea that the cops had fucked up and they went to the wrong house, and now the kid is walking out of this wrong house, and, like, we don't know if is that his spirit? Is he really alive? Is he dead? And then we get confirmation of that, but you have that moment of uncertainty. I think that was very well done.
Yeah.
Like, in terms of just, like, visual storytelling, making you second-guess things and whatnot. That's very good.
Yeah.
Those were good choices on the filmmaker's behalf. I do think the ending being as, like, nonchalant as it was, like, oh, he's such a kick-ass, he killed people, blah, 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 blah. And then he sits down and the girl's like, hey, Finny. Like, everything's normal. And he's like, just call me Finn. And, like, smiles. Like, I killed a guy and everybody thinks I'm popular now. Like, that's a weird way to end it. And specifically, I think it's Blumhouse trying to get away from the idea that all Blumhouse movies end in, like, a shitty jump scare for no reason.
Yeah.
I think they're aware that people think that, and they're trying to, like, get off of it. Did you think that the movie had, like, a thing that it was trying to, like, get at? Some hidden message it was trying to get across?
No.
No, I don't think it was that smart.
I think it was literally what it was.
The thing was stand up for yourself was the big thing.
I guess that was the biggest thing.
Yeah.
But, like, that is a message, I guess, it's been pushed away from a little bit in more modern times. Like, standing up for yourself, you know. Beat these kids' asses. Yeah.
I also think that even that message sort of defeats itself because he didn't really stand up for himself too much. He, like, basically had to get told all the cheat codes, basically.
Yeah.
This wasn't, like, a thing that he...
That is, like, something that's weird because, like, okay, the first guy said that he had almost dug his way out, but we didn't see that. We saw him dig a big hole in the fucking ground.
Yeah.
Which he covered up with the tarp, I guess, to, like, hide it or whatever. And eventually, yeah, that was useful to him. But, like, all those, like, little, like, oh, this is how you do this, and this is how I tried to escape, that didn't culminate in anything. He eventually, like, used those to his own advantage, like, himself. Because, like, if you notice, with the hole, he essentially makes a Vietnamese pit trap.
Yeah.
With the thing that he puts at the bottom is, I think it's the grate over the
grate
ceiling.
from the ceiling, yeah.
Yeah. Which actually is the thing that actually, he falls into and he, comes up and smacks him in the leg and actually, like, sticks him there, I guess.
Well, I think what happened is his foot got caught in one of the little the grates in it, and it just sort of snapped because of the pressure between the lack of a opening and an opening.
Yeah.
And so, when the foot's trying to do that, it just sort of caves under
that was the Vietnamese pit trap thing anyway.
I didn't love that was the answer at the end. It wasn't really him using like his ingenuity. It was basically just, I'm going to beat the shit out of this guy.
Beat the shit out of him and choke him with this fucking phone cord. Yeah.
I'll set up a situation where like I'll trip him and have him fall into this little trap I put together, and it's sort of the Home Alone answer to what do you do when someone's doing something illegal.
I mean, I did think whenever he showed that dog coming down there, I did think, oh well, this is over. But then he changed it up right there, and I was like, okay, well, never mind. Yeah. It's on.
Yeah, if the dog had been loose.
If the dog had been loose, shit.
Yeah, not even close. Yeah, I don't love the message of the film being like, stand up for yourself by beating the shit out of people.
Yeah.
I guess that is a much more 1970s answer to these kinds of problems. And certainly, like, I'm not going to say that, like, if you're abducted by someone and they're going to murder you in a really gruesome way, you shouldn't beat the shit out of them.
I think that's one of the few acceptable times you've got to really just beat the hell out of someone.
Sure. But I just didn't love that he didn't get more opportunities to really express his own, like, ingenuity and creativity to, like, look at how somebody else tried to solve the problem and go, oh, well, that's not going to work because of this. I'll do it differently in this way.
Well, he did do that, but it wasn't shown on camera. Like, that was the thing, is that it was kind of a surprise to the audience. So, like, okay. I mean, we did see him grab that cord and then, like, tie it up. And it was like, okay, so he's making some sort of, like, spring. And then I knew that was about where the hole was. Like, so he's going to, like, trip him into the hole or something.
Yeah.
But then I was thinking that hole wasn't really that deep. And then, so that was what kind of caught me off guard, I guess, was the fact that he put the grate or whatever down there to like actually get him caught in it.
That is the one thing out of that setup that I did not see coming in advance was the like little thing in the bottom. And I didn't even think like that was terribly necessary. If you're like walking at someone full tilt and there's a hole in the ground that you don't see, you'll snap your legs falling into it no matter what the fuck's in the bottom of it, basically. Mm-hmm. Unless it's like a man-sized hole where the bottom of it is like nice cushy ground or something. And even then there's a chance you could still, like jumping on a trampoline, you can snap your legs on that. Yeah. So like you have enough body weight to crush your ankles and your feet falling down just like a foot or two. Or not even a foot or two, maybe like just a couple inches really.
Yeah.
So like I didn't see the grate being terribly necessary. I as soon as he dug that hole and then covered it with the tarp, I was like, oh, he's banking on him like going and maybe checking the toilet and then falling into this thing and snapping his leg and then running upstairs.
Yeah.
That's what I thought he was going to do. I was waiting for that to happen the whole fucking time. Yeah. But it never did. And then eventually at the end it became his like big Home Alone trap that he had put together.
Yeah.
So I didn't feel like the grate was like the little metal bit from the ceiling was terribly necessary. And I really do wish that there was just more of him like interacting with the Mission Impossible aspect of this that I was hoping for, and we didn't really get a whole lot of. We got a little bit of. I wish they just leaned more into it, and it had been like they could have done this as like a sort of dark comedy almost, where it's like, oh, this guy's gonna murder this kid, and he gets to hang out with some ghosts, and they all like plan ways to like reverse Home Alone this bitch and get the fuck out,
Yeah.
And that would have been really fucking fun and cool. Probably like again, I think your argument of like I don't think Blumhouse is like the risk taker to do something like that. I think you're right. I think that's very true. They're certainly willing to put like very low budget into like a contemporary horror basically, and then jam in as many jump scares as they possibly can. I feel bad for the directors who have to do this stuff. I don't think it was a bad movie. I think it was fine.
Yeah, I mean, I would give it like as far as like modern horror movies go, I'd give it like a 6 out of 10, something like that.
Yeah, I think 5 or 6.
Yeah,
somewhere in there. I think it gets pushed over into 6 for me because I do think the acting was really good.
I think the acting was really good. I think it tried to be it did try to be a little bit of a different thing. Yeah. So I did. appreciate that aspect of it.
They talked about stuff that we think is interesting, and that's a good choice.
But really, it wasn't scary. That was the other thing. Yeah. Is that really this is not really a horror movie?
Yeah. I think that's why leaning into the dark comedy aspect would have been the way of it,
Yeah.
And there's so many parts of the movie that are that lighthearted, fun, romp through 1970s culture and things like that. And the little girl cursing at Jesus and whatnot is pretty fun.
That was one of my favorite parts.
Yeah, probably one of the better parts of the movie.
Her conversation with God, because especially what she was saying, reminded me of how I used to talk with God whenever I was growing up, and I wasn't entirely convinced he was real, but I knew what he was supposed to. I knew what he was supposed to be doing.
Yeah. I think that is a very realistic portrayal of how a young person speaks with God, if they're not
I was all right, I know what you're up to up there, man, if you're up there.
Yeah. If they're skeptical in any way. And I think that girl was, any person who goes through trauma is typically a little more skeptical than someone who doesn't really. And so I think that she was skeptical, and that's why she sort of talked that way and try to bargain with God. Yeah, would say things like, I don't know how the rules work, they don't make sense to me. And it's yeah, you're right, there's a lot of contradictions here. It's not exactly clear.
It's I know you can't interfere or something because of some reason, whatever, but...
Also, you definitely do.
But also, help them out.
You give me these visions, and that's kind of interfering, isn't it? I don't understand.
Yeah.
I don't really have a whole lot more to say about the movie. Did you have anything else?
No, that's about it.
Okay, well, I guess we'll just we'll call it here, and it was good having you, man.
Yeah. Thank you.